Acer motherboard, right? So I pulled this out of a weird Acer computer that was like super tiny, and I haven't used it since. It has hot glue on it. Uh, but I have a pretty wacky build planned out to turn this motherboard into a media center because it has a alright CPU, and I'm gonna install some RAM and a GPU, and it's just gonna be pretty wacky. So let's get started. So first off, I have two 8 GB sticks, DDR3, right? You couldn't read that, it's kind of weird. But two SP 8 GB sticks of RAM, right? So I'm just gonna stick these in real fast, just so that we have at least a decent amount of RAM for whatever we're doing on this, right? And then I have a Radeon 550 GPU that I pulled this fan off of this motherboard and glued it onto here like 2-3 years ago because I didn't like the fan wouldn't spin even under like a lot of stress, because when I was doing benchmarks on my PC at the time, the fan would never spin. So now this should spin, and so I'm gonna just pop that in right there, and so got that hooked up. Then that's like normal PC stuff. Now I have a random fan. This is 120 millimeters. I'm gonna probably dig out probably a 90 millimeter from somewhere. And when I get that 90 millimeter, I'm gonna glue it right onto here so the CPU doesn't overheat and die. So I'm gonna go grab that 90 millimeter. So I just dug out this 90 millimeter, might be 80, I'm not sure, out of old Dell Optiplex PC case. I think it's a 3090 Optiplex. So I'm gonna glue this on somewhere around like right about here, and then I'm gonna it just plugs in like a normal fan, and this way I don't have the 120 covering up like the entire space, because this way it's not getting like contact with the CPU cooler, which I would prefer. Even though it's probably not going to cool much, I would just prefer to have it on there because it just makes me feel better. So I'm just gonna glue that on right there. Okay. Now, you might be like, I don't see an M.2 spot on this board. All I see is SATA. And SATA is okay, especially if you're using an SSD. But I'm not even using a hard drive. I'm using an SD card. So I have this 120 gigabyte micro SD card to this adapter to this micro or regular SD card to internal USB, and then I'm just gonna plug this into an internal USB spot like right about there, and probably glue it kinda close, like probably around right here. And no, I'm not hooking up the USB or audio. So yeah, so now that the glue is starting to set, I'm gonna glue it onto the RAM just for extra support, and then onto some of the rear I/O, onto the Ethernet to be exact. So now that I have this, right? Oh yeah, to power it, for right now, I'm gonna use a 600B Kratos M1 by, I think that's Gamdias. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but it's 80 plus bronze. It's just ATX power supply, right? 600 watt with addressable RGB, but that's not what I'm going to use to power this for the whole time. I'm going to end up building my own power supply, if not using a battery. So that's like just for like testing. But this glue is almost set. I'm gonna close my door because I don't want background noise, so I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Sorry, I'm back. And this glue is entirely set now, so that's good. Now I'm gonna remove the cable because it's kind of dried in this spot from being in the Optiplex for so long. But now we have efficient cooling. And so the SD card, I'm still gonna need to take this out and install the OS, and this is the only USB to SD card thing I have. And so I'm gonna need to plug this into my actual computer using like this to regular USB. And so for right now, let's just see if it boots up. Okay, so I have it all plugged in, right, with the power supply, and I'm gonna turn on my monitor. Grab my screwdriver, and this has very weird powering, like power buttons and stuff. So I'm gonna prod around until I can find it. So let's see. Okay. So I'm gonna start the video when it powers on, and I guess we'll see if it works. Okay, so I was able to get it powered on, and you can see the Acer, but obviously it's going to say reboot or select a proper boot device, but hey, it works. And what was the problem, the reason why it wasn't turning on, was because I didn't flip the switch on the power supply, and since there's no power button, it just instantly turns on. So it works. So here we are at my very messy desk, and I just noticed my monitor's not plugged in. So I'm gonna plug in my monitor and then restart the recording. Okay, so here we are at my very messy desk. This camera isn't set to work with this monitor, but we're at my messy desk, right? I got the SD card, and this is like my actual computer. So I'm just logging in right now. Don't worry about my background. And I'm gonna use Raspberry Pi Imager as like what I want to use to image this SD card, and I'm planning on using either Bazzite or another SteamOS like OS. That was confusing. But I'm gonna choose a device. No filtering. And then hopefully it doesn't make it so it will only work with ARM, because this is an x86 PC. And then I'm gonna image this and then show you. So I just started Camaro OS download. I don't know if you can read that, but Camaro OS. And I'm gonna see if I can upload it to the SD card, as like how on like Rufus you can use Windows to go. I'm gonna see if I can do something similar to that. Okay, so in order to get it like onto the SD card, I need to download Etcher, which is basically just select the ISO, select the drive, and then flash. So I'm gonna do that and show you when it's done. Okay, so I'm ending up using Rufus because I can just take a 4 GB a regular 4 GB USB flash drive and flash Camaro OS to my to it so I can make it into a bootable USB drive, and then I can plug in the SD card and the flash drive, and then boot off the flash drive and put it onto the SD card. So that's what I'm gonna end up doing. Okay, so there might be a little bit of background noise because I had to turn on my fan because it's getting cold. It's a heater. And so I'm back here in the place, right? And I have the computer, the SD card, and the 4 GB USB flash drive. So I'm gonna plug in the flash drive. Now I'm gonna plug in the SD card. There. And now I'm gonna power it on. Gotta move that. So I'm gonna power this on and show you. Okay, so here we are. This should work. All I'm seeing is that right now, so I'm a little nervous, but I guess we'll see. It does not look like it's doing anything, and the flash drive, it's just orange, so there's no like, it's just powered. There's no like changes to it right now, so nothing's going on. I'm gonna see if I have it set as the boot device, and I have to grab a keyboard, so I'll be right back. Okay, so I got my PS2 keyboard right here, right? E-Machines. Okay, well, I got my PS2 keyboard by E-Machines, right? Now, let's see if this thing works. Okay, so I'm in the BIOS, right? The processor, or CPU, is an AMD E450 APU with Radeon TM. That's not very good. I have 16 gigabytes of memory, so that makes sense. Gotta go to boot device. I'm pretty sure that this is my 4 gigabyte. Wait. This might, yeah, I think this is my 4 gigabyte SD card, and even if not, I set both my SanDisk, which is this, to the back, right? So I'm gonna try and reboot. Should pop up with Acer. There we go. Okay, that did not work. I'm gonna quiet. I don't know what I'm gonna do. My keyboard is no longer working. So, I just don't know. Okay, so I'm downloading Windows 8, and then I'm gonna do Windows to Go on the SD card. So, cause Camaro OS, I could not get it to work. So, I'll show y'all when this is done downloading. Okay, so I downloaded a Windows 8 ISO. That took about 30 minutes to an hour. But, I'm not gonna use the Raspberry Pi imager. I'm gonna use, Rufus. Because I just prefer it. So I got the 128. Now I need to select Windows 8. And then Windows to Go, and then Start. Okay, this will take a while. It has to complete one of 12 tasks, and then I'll be done. And now it's applying the Windows images, and so I'll show y'all when it's done. Okay, so I got the SD card plugged in. Now I'm gonna turn on the computer. And I'm sorry if you hear background noise. My fan is now louder because it is nighttime. So, recovery couldn't. Okay, sorry for the ridiculous background noise. So I got Windows 10 Windows to go from Rufus installed onto here. And now we should be able to test it. Loading off of a micro SD card. Okay. Okay, so Windows actually loaded. So here we are. We're just in normal Windows. I'm just gonna make a regular offline account. Okay, so now we're just in a simple Windows installation. I'm just gonna go grab a mouse and tweak my settings and delete Microsoft Edge. Okay, so I got my iPad now, and so I'm just gonna remove the password, and so that way you just turn it on and it locks straight in. Okay, it's time to see if that worked. So I'm also gonna set this in 2x speed if it goes very slow. So I'm gonna restart. Okay, so that didn't take too long, but it's just loaded straight in. I didn't have to type anything, so now we gotta go inside and get this hooked up to Ethernet. Okay, so before we get this hooked up to like Ethernet and stuff, I do want to glue this down on here somewhere, so that way it just doesn't like get in the way. And I also want to solder on a power button, so I'm just gonna take one of these little tiny buttons I have, well, just tactile buttons, and gonna solder some wires to it, and then we'll be set to hook this up to Ethernet. Okay, so originally I was gonna use the button like I showed you, but I did not like that. It was a little small for my liking, so I'm gonna take one of these clicky switches, right? And then I'm also gonna take one of like some jumper cables. Gonna chomp them right here, right? Cause see on this end how they plug into like a pin. Like, gee, look. Okay, so I got these wires soldered on pretty well. So now I'm gonna attach this to the motherboard and go inside. So next time you see me, we'll be inside. Okay, so I got it hooked up to my Ethernet here, and so now I'm gonna turn it on, and it should pop up on this monitor with my nice keyboard and mouse. Okay. Yes, I did it. And so now it should load straight into Windows. Okay, so now I'm in Windows, right? I can hook up to the Ethernet. This is gonna take a minute, but there, now I'm hooked up to the Ethernet, and I can go online. Okay. I'm just gonna get like a NES emulator. So, in the video where I learned about this, the dude has a bit of an accent. So, to me, it sounded like play dite, but it's play night. So, I did find it. So, now I'm just gonna download it, and it'll work, I assume. Okay, so it installed, thank God. And now we just have to wait for it to load. Okay, now that we have this, I'm gonna close that. Okay, so I did all the stuff, so I put it in the startup folder. Now I'm gonna restart. And closer to 2 minutes, but it works, and this I can turn it on, go grab a snack, come back, and just play my games. Now I'm going to install controller macro, so I can just use a controller with everything. Okay, so after a lot of research, I couldn't find one that would actually work for what I'm trying to do, that doesn't cost money, and that's just something I don't have at the moment, sadly. But so now I'm gonna go to steampowered.com, and I'm gonna probably not log into my account because it uses an email I don't have access to, unless I want to log in with my phone, but I do not think I have Steam on my phone. So I'm just not gonna log into Steam. I'm just gonna get it for right now. Okay, so I can't find any emulators that work for some reason. I assume it's because I'm on an SD card, because I tried looking at NES emulators, SNES emulators, Wii, GameCube, N64, Virtual Boy. I looked at literally everything, and nothing is working, but it loads straight into Playdite, and it's Playdite full screen, so you can use a controller, and so I guess this is where this video ends. Goodbye.